My name is Matt. I'm one of the co-founders of Eversound. And when I think of the title of this next session, being the cost of meaning and purpose and selling value from the CNA to CEO, before I hand this off and really get our esteemed and rock star panel, and I feel even grateful to be on the same call with them, I just wanted to say a few things, because I imagine if you're attending this today, you may already see the value of adding meaning and purpose to our elders. I imagine you see it every single day, right? An elder learning something new, an elder making a new connection or developing a new friendship, an elder engaging with the world around them, and maybe something just as an elder smile or someone saying thank you for helping to improve that quality of life. But how do we equate these moments of purpose and meaning into a language or a concept that seems so common sense? Because what's life without purpose, right? And, how do we dispose this information and, get it to someone who may not be fully behind this person-centered revolution, and to have it make sense for them? And when I say sense, I'm not saying common sense, but I'm saying sense in terms of dollars and cents. So let's face it, because when we do most things, we need time and we need money. And so how do we as leaders, as advocates, as champions, as heroes, convince others that there truly is a return on engagement? And as we currently partner with over 1,000 communities across the country, my experience has been it's those providers, those communities, those heroes that are prioritizing and investing in the resident experience, the staff experience, and investing monetarily and culturally. It's in their DNA. They're the ones that are having better business outcomes, such as improved occupancy, better staff and resident retention, less of a turnover issue. Now, instead of me talking at you the entire time here, I want to introduce our panel, a group of people who have become friends over the past couple of weeks, couple of years, that are truly the experts behind this. So we have Joe Corella, the CEO of Scandinavian Living Center. We have Michelle Daniel, the VP of Philanthropy and Strategic Implementation at Methodist Senior Services. And we have Angie McAllister, Director of Quality of Life and Culture at Signature Healthcare. Now, I'm going to pass it off to Joe first. And Joe, simple question here. I know we had some time a few weeks ago hanging out where I can definitely, get your passion, but why is the topic of meaning and purpose and really selling its value so important to you?
Well, I think you have to invest in community. Where we support person-centered, resident-centered care, but we do not support segregation and isolation. I remember when we were building the Scandinavian Living Center, and some of you know this, 50% of our community is common space. We invested in that because we wanted the community to participate and connect. And our community is made up of the neighbors living there, the neighbors working there, and the neighbors gathering there. And before COVID, and Matt, when you came to visit, it was such an isolated building. We had over 2,000 visitors, not counting family and friends, per month, and over 40 organizations. Wynn, who spoke earlier, Wynn Barnard, she was skeptical. She goes, why do we need all these people here? And as soon as we closed our door, a week before Commonwealth of Massachusetts closed all the doors back in 2020, we got it, she got it. The isolation was terrible. So Jack said something earlier about people didn't get it. When we opened up with community-centered living, people did not get it. And that's everybody. That is the, quote, residents, the staff, the entire community, the city of Newton. We're located in Newton, right outside of Boston. And that, and I was reading something a few weeks ago about why is this happening? Why do people not get it? Why do they think it's a good idea to build a beautiful building isolated from the community? And, I think it started years ago. I read in a wonderful book called, I think it was Longevity Economy, but it was talking about how we started doing the census in 1850. Way back in 1850, we started breaking up, keeping track of births, deaths, and in the age categories. And of course, we got the 65 plus category. And I think right there, we all started focusing on that group. Like, well, we started focusing on all the groups, but The 65 plus became an issue, like, oh, we have to take care of them. And I think that's the beginning of the segregation and the isolation. And over the years, we built places for them to take care of them. But we started moving away from community. We started to isolate and segregate. And I think I heard Win says, I don't want to be segregated. I want to be part of the entire community. So the investment is in the community, and the people that benefit are the people living there and the staff, the neighbors that work there. No one wants to work in an outdated building, an institutional setting, and no one wants to gather in an institutional setting. So I'll share one fun example of the village movement. The Boston Beacon Hill Village is down the street, but the Newton at Home Village came to us. And if you're familiar with the village, their mission, and I'm summarizing, I'm being very simple, I'm simplifying this. Their mission is to keep people out of our places, to keep them in their neighborhoods, in their homes. And I support that. I support home care. I support it all. They came to us and said, can we put our headquarters in your building, one of the 40? And people came to me and said, don't do it. Their mission works against us. And I said, community has to work together. I don't think nursing homes replace hospitals. I don't think assisted living replaces nursing homes. I do not think that home care, the village movement, it's not a replacement. It's in addition to what we're trying to offer. So they came in, and two things happened again that they don't get it. The perception that we've been living with for over 150 years. The members of the village group said, we're not coming into the center. There's no way we're going in there for programming. It was perfectly fine because their mission is to stay away. Well, what started to happen is we had a resident, Cleo Mahoney, who moved in at 98, but at 100 years old, when they were there, she asked to volunteer for them. The village movement is made up of volunteers. So Cleo's thing was to call in a shut-in elder who was 87 years old. And think about it. Every day she called this gentleman, someone living in an assisted living, was touching base to make sure someone was safe in the neighborhood. Recently, the executive director of Newton at Home came to me and says, you know, Joe, the members were against coming into your center. Now they want to come. And that's how our perceptions have to change. We have to show them an example. That, I mean, in the beginning, the city of Newton, people in the city thought it was a marketing ploy, nothing to do with marketing. So I know we have a lot to talk about. And I know people are going to ask, how do you measure success? I promise you I'll circle back to that because my answer will surprise some of you. But anyway, I hope that helps, Matt.
Oh, no, awesome. Thank you, Joe. And, you know, I might have to find or create an office in your community too, because I live in Newton. So I'm literally right down the street. But, you know, Angie, I want to pass this off to you. I know, you know, I've gotten to know you over the years. We've hung out in rural Kentucky together at Wendy's Neverland. And, you know, relationships, I know is something that you're an expert on. And I'm curious, you know, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's so good to be here, Matt. So just to take a page out of Joe's book, thanks, Joe, for, you know, setting this up so perfectly and really talking about that human connection. When you think about relationships, you think about it has to be more than that buzzword that everybody's using. And, you know, everybody's like, oh, you've got to have relationships. But you have to make time for relationships. Relationships don't magically happen. And so that means time has to be afforded in the day. And it has to be part of the overall process in the system and the community for relationships to occur. So, I mean, just really thinking about that, I think a lot about what Dr. Thomas says, and having working with him lately, thinking about forest and just really think about how trees are connected in the forest and how humans can be the same way. Humans can also be connected in the community in much the same way that we see trees being connected in the forest, and kind of taking a page from nature around us and looking at that and figuring out what our place is and what that human connection means. I also want to say I read a great book back at the start of the pandemic when it was released by Brenda Krause Ehart, and I don't know if you guys know her, or she has a book on neighbors. And so you guys can look up that book. It's on Amazon, but it's called Neighbors, The Power of the People Next Door. And it's a really powerful book on building connections and having reciprocal connections that matter. So it's not so much the way that often we focused on it in the system is I'm going to have my staff, or they're gonna make great connections for the elders, right? But it's a gain. It has to be equal for staff to have the reciprocal feeling of that community within them, as much as the elders feel that as well. So that has to be an equal gain. So thinking about that, and then how do we, so that it's not one-sided for the elders, but how do we also create those opportunities for connection to happen? Because connections don't magically happen, just like the time for those connections don't magically happen. We have to take the space and make the place for connections to take place. And that has to be very purposeful. And I think back to Brenda's book, and she talked a lot about intentional neighboring. And so when you think about that intentional neighboring, it's how do we teach people to be a good neighbor? Because we are people and we're all people. And how do we teach people and demonstrate that intentional neighboring for people so that they understand that it's a give and it's a gain. I give to the community and I gain from the community, and that's really how relationships work. So that's a little bit that I'm thinking right off the top of my head, and having everybody go out and get that book. It's a game changer in thinking about building community.
Yeah, I think it's such an important piece too, Angie, and thank you, Joan, for putting that into the chat there so you guys can go check it out. So hopefully you get some credit, Angie, if people do buy the book. But I think it makes a great point, and I think Christine really highlighted it, saying that it's really important about what you said about the staff feeling good about the connections as well, because it is a two-way street, right? It's not just it's we're all in this together, right? And how do we connect and really interact and develop those friendships with one another? And I'm going to pass it off here to you, Michelle. I know you've got some pretty cool things to share with us, but how do we make it happen? You've got the fundraising background, and what do you think about the situation?
Yeah, and you're welcome to share the slides if you'd like. Otherwise, I can just talk about it. But fundraising, I always say drop the D and make it fun, because if it's not fun, people are going to move on to the next thing. So, there's got to be buy-in, if you will, or ownership of events to reach out to the greater community for awareness. So finding what the need is and who's connected to that need. Is it mama's need? Is it a friend's need? Whose need is it? And why is there a connection or no connection at all? So, brainstorm about what it is you want or need. Be passionate about the same project. We all know that sometimes we get solicited in the mail by things that we're like, well, it's kind of interesting. But then we also have the things that we're super passionate about. So to meet elders' needs, who's passionate about that need? Is it an elder who, wants to go on a horse ride? We'll get farmers involved, folks that have horses, that have a passion for older adults and horses. So making things a reality that are, pertain to the people involved, their stakeholders. Are the elders, former elders' families who already has an interest? Maybe mama passed away, but I want to volunteer there and still be involved because I have a connection and I know all mama's friends. Don't forget those former elders' family members that were involved. Those folks really want to be involved still because it's a connection to mama. And it's all about connecting people, much like Angie said. Church groups, civic groups, what's the same vision? It's important that we share a vision, to have that connectivity. You can move on to the next slide, because I have a special guest that's on video that she really is the star of this show. But grassroots, y'all, it's a tactic that's worked for so many years. Just getting folks together, having some conversation, and then putting it into motion, dreaming together. I love a good think tank. And so when you get together and you dream, like, what's the problem? Instead of the same old fix-it solution that you just keep having problem solution, if there were no limitations and there was no monetary limitations, like what could we do if we really dream together? And then, believe it or not, a lot of this stuff just falls into place with the proper stakeholders. So get connected. People give to people. You've got those good groups out there, like, for instance, American Red Cross. You text 8, 10, 10, 10, and they give $10 for a national emergency, so be it. And that's wonderful, but that transaction's done. And in fundraising, you want to be very mindful of the difference of transactional giving and relational giving. In elder care, we're relational people. We're connected people. We believe in meaning. I hope we do. I believe everyone on this call gives a care, because Pioneer Network is a group of people who are out of the box thinkers from the traditional elder care, the traditional facility thinking. So people giving to people, it's because of that relationship. It's because of that connectivity. Grant writing, well, I put this last because people oftentimes will push that to that wonderful grant writer, that one person who can sit at their computer and make it happen. And that person makes the magic happen. But it's really about the dreaming together. But I want to tell you that there's a lot of good foundations doing really good things out there. And many of them are looking to diversify their work. And y'all, I got nothing against, children and youth programs and educational programs, but let me tell you, elders need the mic. And when you write a grant to a group of people who believe in healthcare or wanting to make a difference in their community, boy, oh boy, when they see something innovative. And I got to tell you, this past year, the It's Never Too Late grants that I wrote, the foundations were hungry for that, because they said, we've never given to elder care before. I'm like, well, come on, like, let's keep going. So I oftentimes say fundraising is not a one-person job, nor is activities. As a recovering bingo hostage taker, I was once in activities many years ago. I believe that fundraising is all of our responsibility. And as a team, we should go above and beyond together. I do have a video that I want to share with a very special friend, because she is a grassroots leader in fundraising. What I can do while we're waiting on that video, I apologize for everybody seeing a screen frame of me. But I'm going to go to how to make dreams a reality. And it's my philosophy in elder care. It's not no, it's how, because y'all, we hear the word no so much. It's not in the budget. It's not in this. It's not in that. Well, I'm blessed to be part of an organization that I'm okay saying it's not no, it's how. So, understanding that sometimes timing is not as we anticipated. Research takes time, and knowing the right time. Let's see if this will work. Still no sound. So I'm going to keep going, y'all, just to be a good steward of your time. So research the right grants and the grants that pertain to you. If they say healthcare, if they say making a difference in someone's life, if they say intergenerational, if they just pay attention to grants and so forth, but research, a lot of times it's the vision, education, implementation, as the Eden Alternative teaches. You've got to do that educational part before you are like Nike and just do it. So you've got to do that research. Don't wait for the perfect time and the perfect plan, because it's never going to happen. You got to be willing to get out there. Deadlines come sooner than we expect. So make sure you do a reverse timeline for any sort of plan or project. Relationships are organic, and we've got to keep cultivating relationships, especially for those who want to be innovative and think with us. And as I said earlier, the transactional giving is different from relational giving, and it works in urgent or in-person situations, but rarely does it that relationship last. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michelle. It looks like we're trying to get the video here working. I'm reading through the chat right here. Do we want to give it another try? Third time's a charm? Michelle, I do have high hopes that we'll get that video to work, because I did have a chance to check it out, and it is awesome. So, hopefully we'll get that to work. I can try downloading it on my computer too, if I can do that. But, I wanted to kind of open up some questions for the panel here. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try and get them into this conversation. And, Joe, I want to start with you, because you kind of teed it up earlier, but how do you go about measuring success? And I think you have a very unique perspective too, being a CEO who kind of understands all of this, but how do you go about it?
Well, it's two things. Well, I believe that there's two things are going on here. They say, well, how many people have to go to a program for it to be successful? I said, it doesn't matter. One, if one person goes and connects, that's a success. The better question is, what's a failure? If one person is isolated, that's failure. So we look at it that way. But the thing that I think is going to surprise you when they say to me, how do you measure community-centered living? I said, when people come into the building to go to a gathering or a program, and they have no idea where they are, they have no idea what the CNA Living Center is, to me, that's successful. Because it's none of their business that we're a traditional assisted living. I mean, marketing-wise, it helps later because they discover that there are people living there, their neighbors are living there. So that's the thing that's why I say it's not marketing. It's more about teaching people that we have to get back to human connection. So I measure it that way. And I remember we had an ice cream social. We were going to have this celebration. And I said, people said, well, you got to advertise, you put in social media, you get email. I said, absolutely not. Let's test this thing out. Let's use word of mouth. So no one was allowed to email. No one was allowed to use social media, no mailings, no advertising. We had over 300 people show up. In fact, politicians showed up because people by then knew what we were trying to do. They showed up. One politician was trying to promote himself for some election. And it was like, no, you're here just to have ice cream. And we didn't want to see people who were never there. We only wanted the people that came through our front door. So over 300 people came. So that's kind of how you measure it. It does help with word of mouth. So that's my little thing. And then that was it. One person brought her daughter. She's the president of Leading Age Massachusetts. Her daughter is now 15 or 16 years old. And she had no idea. She thought we were an ice cream place. And that's the connection. We just want them to know about the gathering opportunity, the human connection. So she had fun. We all had fun that day.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I know you had told that to me, Joe, and it definitely makes sense. When I visited, I first too, I was like, where am I right now? Because there's like a gym in there and you've got all sorts of other things. And I think I might have Michelle's video here teed up. So let me see if I can play this because I definitely want you to hear this.
Hey, everybody. I wanted to introduce you to my friend Alice, who is in Tupelo, Mississippi at the Traceway campus. My name is Michelle Daniel, and I work for Methodist Senior Services. Alice, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was a school teacher for many, many years and wore many hats, museum educator, and you name it. Had everything but a pilot's license, but that's okay. And I've been at Traceway now for 10 years, and I have found my ministry here. Fundraising is one of my passions, and the need is definitely here. And we're getting ready for a big fundraiser with bake sale with Meals on Wheels.
Wonderful. Well, tell us why you have such a passion for fundraising.
I don't know. I think it's sort of like getting the applause from an audience when you do something and you're nervous, and then all of a sudden everybody's with you. And that's the feel that I get when I reach out to people to help me with a certain idea, and everybody wants to run with me. And that's where it just has gone on for years and years.
Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit about your Eden Garden. How did that get started?
Well, it was before I even had the Eden training, I think in my spirit I was already Eden. I think Eden people are born, not made. Anyway, so there I had a little garden spot outside the front door over here. And so I kept looking at it, and it just looked sort of drab, had one little tree, crepe myrtle. And so I started gathering big river rocks and started writing the principles of Eden on it. certain words that would correspond with it. And the executive director here saw it and he said, "Oh my goodness, that is awesome." And he went on and on and on. And I thought, well, we could do that on a bigger scale. So I went outside in between A and B hall, and there was a rose garden with these shabby roses that have long since been spent. And I said, "There's the Eden Garden." And I started raising money for to build a garden where people, plants, animals, and children would feel welcome, and where people could go to get out of their rooms, to read, to pray, to just visit.
Wonderful.
And it happened.
That's
It
awesome.
happened, and I'm proud of it. You were there for the dedication. That was wonderful.
I was excited to be there. So tell me, how did you raise the funds and how much did you raise?
Well, the thing about it is, with the several projects that I have done here, you have got within me, if I get the enthusiasm, I can set you on fire. And everybody that I go to, I bring to it an enthusiasm of a dream. Let me tell you what we can do here. And people were writing me checks for $2,000 and $5,000. And it was just absolutely unbelievable. Even people were having their grandchildren in their memory of somebody who lived here write checks. And so it just all came together so beautifully. It was $12,000. We have a pergola and watering system, and we had a lot of trouble with plants, but now everything is absolutely gorgeous. I sent you a picture.
Yes, I'll share that picture with our friends at the Pioneer Network. Very good. So tell me, you mentioned earlier about bake sale, and I believe you said Boston butt sale for the Meals on Wheels program. Tell me what you do annually for Meals on Wheels with Traceway and that outreach ministry, and how that fundraiser works each year.
Well, the thing about it is Meals on Wheels became very dear to my heart because I went out one time with the director who was delivering meals, and there was a man sitting there, and I said, "Oh, does he get a meal?" And she said, "No, he's not on the list." And I thought, oh no, he needs to be on the list. So when you're fundraising, you see the need, and then out of that need comes that desire to do something. And if it's money that you've got to raise, then you got to get on it. Well, anyway, what I decided that all these ladies here at Traceway have been cooking for their families 30, 40, 50 years. Traceway's finest cooks. And people in the community know if these ladies made it, it has to be good. So we had cobblers and fried pies and cakes, and we just made a fortune. And we made $5,000 on just an afternoon of a bake sale. We have homemade bread and all of that. So we're doing it again this year.
Wonderful.
And then the Boston butts, they are sold for $35 a piece. They're prepared by a local store, and then they're wrapped and people come and pick them up. And then when they pick up their Boston butts, then they can peruse the items in the bake sale. And this is our 5th annual one. So I think that's going to draw a lot of attention because they know we've been successful in the past.
Yes. And what do you normally raise on those Boston butt days?
Oh gosh. Oh, I can't remember really, but it's way up there. I think it's close to 10,000-15,000.
Yeah. You do a great job with that. Alice, our time's running up, but what I want to ask you is that our theme today, when this recording shows in the public, the theme is envisioning the future. With the Pioneer Network, it consists of elders and CNAs and nurses, activity directors, administrators, even CEOs. And I want to know, what do you want them to know about fundraising at the grassroots level, like what you've done successfully at Traceway?
Well, given that you've given me all of these different classes of people and at different levels of the program. I think that if you get the idea and you're not that creative, get on it kind of person, find you somebody. There's somebody in your there's somebody like me. There's an elder who has worked all their lives and done great things and can say, I'll take it. I'll run with it. And I think that's what it is. If you don't have the creativity or the talent or whatever, it's nothing to go find you somebody and just give them whatever they need, the money, the flyers, the whatever.
Wonderful. Well, Alice, you are a friend to so many. You're a friend to me, and all of those wonderful things. And you serve in so many amazing ways, but you're an inspiration. You're an inspiration to me. And I'm super, super, super thankful for you and all that you do. And I want you to know that you truly make a difference.
Well, thank you very much. I do just smile a little bit, as Cynthia would say.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I have so many follow-up questions for Alice there. I was like almost going to ask her thinking she was on this call with us, but I am gravely mistaken. But I think there was some really good chat going on about, finding your Alice and, what that could kind of entail. And I'm curious, Michelle, and maybe you touched on this before, we kind of went through the video thing, but do you have, and this is open for everybody on the panel, but do you have any suggestions on how to find those Alices within your community or, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Alice was already in motion when I joined the Methodist Senior Services team, I have to say. But the thing is opening up the possibility. There is a need, and instead of saying, yeah, we should fix that rose garden, yeah, we'll put it on our list of things to do. As leaders, many times we just keep putting it on our list of things to do. And if we would just move out of the way and provide an opportunity for people who have talents. Again, elders have so much to give. And if we just move out of the way and have conversation and empower the people that live there, they want to do. And if we move out of their way and honor them and give them the tools that they need and support them. So we move from in charge to in support of, we have a whole world of possibility.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And it reminds me early on in our EverSound days, I remember interviewing an administrator whose residents put together a fundraiser to feed, I think, some of the local kids. And it really just changed his whole perspective on it because one of the residents got on the video call, was asking how much it would cost to feed per person. And they wish they had started it the year before because they could have raised a lot more funds. And it really just altered the way that he kind of looked at senior living as a whole. And I think it's, to your point about getting out of the way and even just finding those that might be enthused and just giving that positive reinforcement that they can do it and sharing those stories about Alice and others like her who are doing that and doing it successfully, I think could really help set up a lot of people and do some good, right, for the entire community, which is kind of the ongoing theme here. No, I wanted to.
I believe Alice is on the call, y'all. Just so you know, she's a busy gal, and she had a busy day, and so she was going to try to make it for this session. So I just want to let you know I appreciate all the comments in the chat about Alice, but I think that she may be able to see all of those. So Alice, if you're with us, we love you. Thanks for being a part of this.
Yeah, I hope you're here, Alice. That'd be amazing. Now, one of the things I want to ask, and I want to ask you, Angie, because I think you've got a good sense, and I know there's a lot of communities that you've helped with, but we talk about this purposeful environment for residents, but also this purposeful environment for staff. And you look at the staffing shortages and all of that, but to you, and I know you're talking about relationships and connections and making sure that the staff feel connected, but have you noticed anything during your time to create a more purposeful environment for staff to work in?
So I think this is an interesting question, and I don't know that I have all the answers or any of the answers. Let me say that. So throw some ideas in the chat, my friends out there in Pioneer Network world. But I think as I've sat back through the pandemic, especially, and just been observant and observed a lot more over the last year and a half, I think that I've recognized that the movement, the perceived culture change movement that's been happening for the last several years, might have overlooked the really important critical part of how do we create that purposeful environment for staff, and what I would call for today is a person directed movement for staff that's equal to that of the elders. And so I've really started to see that that's lacking, at least to me, and from what I've seen by, looking and talking to people around the world, and just how do we do that? And I think that if you want, let's talk a minute about social capital, because I want to kind of tie those two things together, because when we see social capital and when we talk about that, and we're thinking about Alice just now coming on and talk to us, that's social capital, right? That's how do we gain strength from the people we share our lives with? And that's really what it means for stakeholders and elders to have that purposeful life. So if you look at our staff, it's how do we help them to gain strength from each other and from the people around them? How are we creating time for innovation for them? Because it's easy, as Michelle says, it's easy for us to say we're going to delegate this to other people to do, but when we don't create structure and availability for them to do it, then we're still failing that. And so it's really how do we have to change our systems to be able to work to really build that community and be able to do that. That processes, and I love what you're saying, Joan, we need processes to support the passion, and that's absolutely true. So, just thinking about that and tying it into social capital, because that's all about resources. And when you start to think about shared resources, shared lives, and what that means together, how do we start to share parts of identity and the impact of that on relationships, and the impact of those relationships on our resources is what really, really builds the social capital. So just wanted to kind of throw those things out as some initial ideas, but it's really, I think, stepping back and doing a complete reset and a refocus on where we're at and how we're providing that person-directed level of care for our staff that we've tried to provide for elders. Because I feel like we're never, and I don't want to be doomsdayish, but it's really hard to provide that for the elders when you're not providing that for the staff, because they don't have a role model. They don't see what that is, right? So they need to see and they need to feel, oh, this feels good. And when I do this for other people, I bet they feel that same feeling that I feel, and they feel like they belong. And so it's creating that space of belonging, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when I visited Wendy's Neverland, which was just an awesome thing that you did, talk about, a staff that was engaged, that was finding purpose. It was just, I tear up just thinking back to that. And Joe, I know I saw you shaking your head a bunch there about kind of the person-centered approach for staff. And I saw you interact with your staff and could definitely tell that there was a lot of love there. So, being that leader, like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think when we do the philosophy of community-centered living, it's building social capital for everyone. And we don't focus just on the residents or the staff. We focus on everyone. And when we do that, it brings everybody together. I kid with the staff and said, listen, guys, you don't need to be friends. You just need to be family here, because we fight. But everybody gets along, and we have to create that atmosphere. I don't know if that's the Italian in me, but I just feel like the entire community's family. Everyone's family to me. But I think that's important, that mentality. And when we designed the Scandinavian Living Center, we designed it for the staff, but we designed it for the neighbors across town, and we designed it for the residents. No one was first, no one was second. It was the entire community. And when you do that, you empower everybody. Everybody takes an active role. And I never worried, and Michelle said something too, I don't worry about the money, because years ago, I had this very successful entrepreneur was teaching a business class, and he asked everybody, what's the most important thing in building a company? And everybody was like, well, of course, it's the money. And he said, that's the last thing you worry about. The first thing you worry about is what's the idea? And then when you come up with the idea, the vision, the dream, Everybody like Alice, everybody comes along and joins. The money's easy. It becomes easy. Michelle, you can't raise money without an idea or a dream. There's no obstacle when you have a dream. There's no obstacle when you want to do the right thing, because people will support that. And I've seen it 100 times over from the community.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And Michelle, I think unless there's another Michelle Daniel out there writing in the chat, I think you hit a really just a great way of thinking, right? It's not us versus them in terms of what it is. It is a family, it is a community. And how are we working together to grow not just ourselves, but those around us? And back to Angie's earlier point about the neighbors. And, would you like to elaborate on that at all? I think it was a really important point.
Yeah, a million years ago, we learned something like, as elders do unto staff, so shall staff do unto elders, the Eden Golden Rule. And why we are still dumbfounded, why do we have such turnover? Well, if our focus is just the residents, just the elders, then we're missing the mark, because who's caring for those elders? And if we're not loving that team and nurturing that team and doing everything we can to grow these individuals and create a situation where they know they're an individual that is valued, then how in the world are they going to take care of elders the same way? So it's really a managerial challenge that we've got to change our focal point. It's not just elders, it's elders and team, which means we're doing double duty, but it's worth every minute of it.
I feel like we should have given you all microphones to drop after some of these statements here, because it's really makes a lot of sense. And I know we've got about Penny, like 9 to 10 minutes before we need to wrap it up here. And I think when going back to kind of the topic at hand of selling that value. So, if I'm an activity director or life enrichment director, how do I help sell the value and of engagement, of purpose of life, of all of those sort of things to some of those people that might be more, in the spreadsheets, looking at numbers and trying to equate it to that? And I'll open that up to anybody who wants to jump in.
Well, it's funny because when we have those 40+ organizations, they bring the activities and the programs to the center. We're very spoiled that way. Prior to COVID, we were very spoiled because the activities department, we absolutely have to invest in that, because it's not activities, it's really community life. Someone had mentioned that in the community life director. I love that name. You have to invest in the entire community, which is everything, the programming. But we were lucky because when you have over 40 organizations utilizing you, once they figure out what you're trying to do, they come to you. They call you up and say, can we vote at your place? Can we do the blood drive? I know Wynn alluded to it earlier this morning. We didn't reach out to those people. Right now, they're reaching out to us, and that's the investment. 50% of the building was common space. That was, I've said this 100 times. I was told I was crazy. That's not a good investment. It was the best investment we ever made. And it's paid dividends over the years, and it's paid human dividends, the human connections that we're creating. So to me, that's the investment. Invest in your entire community, and it will pay off for the city and town that your place is in. We have over 40,000 facilities in this country that are underutilized. They're beautiful buildings isolated from their cities and towns. And it's about time we start thinking about changing that. So cities and towns need us. We're just as important as the school, the fire department, police department. We are part of the infrastructure, and everyone needs to invest in that. This is easy money. Michelle, this is easy fundraising.
And don't tell my boss that. Just kidding. But in reality, though, when I teach what is success, and we talk about the institutional model and what's the culture change model, I write 3 things down: happy elders, happy families, happy team members. And those 3 things are going to sell whatever you need sold. They're going to raise your money. They're going to raise your satisfaction. They're going to raise your 5 stars to being 5 stars. They're going to, I mean, it all comes to you. And it's because if you focus on the happiness of individuals, how do you do that? You relationship build, you get well known, you get to know those team members, you give a care. You're here night and day and blood, sweat, and tears. You care about the people that you serve as a leader who are serving the team, the elders. And so as you do that, it cultivates growth, and that growth, it's exponential, and that's where the money comes. That's where the enthusiasm comes. That's where the ideas come.
And Angie, any thoughts on that? I see you nodding your head over there.
So I always deal with the practical. So I think some practical advice here too that I would share is, because what you originally asked was, how do we get the people who are in the offices doing spreadsheets to come out and take part in the community, right? And so I think about what our leadership looks like and how we hold people accountable for helping. I mean, community is all about coming together with our talents and what we have. And so a lot of times, sometimes some people who are working in our offices need a little gentle nudge to spend more time with the elders, and holding all leaders in our communities accountable to spend that time with the elders. So if it's like Michelle, I know Michelle loves scrapbooking and that's her passion, then are there people who love scrapbooking? And Michelle, how do you connect with people and offer that resource in the community so that you really start to support community life? Because it's not, I hate the term activity director, and I've been an activity director since 1996. So, and I hate that term because we're not directing anything, right? There's no directing here. It's how are we engaging people in life and community and purpose and all the things that we're talking about today. So that's one thing. And then back to what Joe said, what do our spaces look like? Are our spaces set up to promote connection and life happening in our communities? Because if we're trying to have life in our communities, but we're still holding on to those very institutional spaces, it's really hard. So really trying to figure out how can we can reconfigure the spaces we have. And I know so many people are working in older buildings, and you can't necessarily knock down walls and do those things, but it's what small changes can you make to the environment so that you can bring people together and help them to connect, because spaces do matter. They really do.
Powerful stuff. Now, we do have 5 minutes left. I just wanted to give everyone just a quick 60-90-second opportunity just to kind of, I think, Angie, you make a good point about the practicality and what can we go do different or just really implement in the next 30, 60, 90 days. If each of you just want to take, about 60 seconds or so and just give one takeaway to the group here of what they can do to help promote this change from within. No pressure to go first.
Well, I think you have to get people to change their perception of us, the industry. And I'll end with a sweet story. Years ago, we had a outpatient PT prior to COVID, and a mother brought her teenager there to get rehab. And she looked at like where the rehab was. It was in this assisted living. And she said, I don't want my son here. And she took him away. And the PT director said to me, I was shocked. But a couple of weeks later, another parent came with a teenager and said, same thing, the perception, like, well, we should be isolating and segregating, but you took a chance. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, the teenager was up in the cafe having drinks with the residents, and no one scripted that. The person did it on their own. So I think what we need to do is open up our places and try to change the perception of segregation and isolation. And it's just little things we can do to bring the people in, and don't script it. Let it happen naturally. And then eventually the cities and towns will recognize the value of every facility in their geographic location. So that's my little text.
Thank you, Joe. Angie, did you, I saw you unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. So here, we haven't talked a lot about technology. So let me talk about this for just a minute. Okay. And I want to tell, like Joe, I've got a really great story from a friend of mine in Ireland who relayed this story to me that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. So there was an artist in Ireland who was working in a care home in Ireland, and they were working on a dance. So they were working with elders in this care home on a dance that was choreographed. And when the pandemic hit, of course, they could no longer do that. So then they began to teach the elders in that home how to use Zoom, just like we're using Zoom today. And we start to think about how technology really has grown and interfaced and taught us so much over the last 15 months. And they began to not make excuses or say, oh, the elders can't use this technology. This is such a hindrance. I don't know how this is going to work. The artists began working one-on-one with these elders and teaching them this choreographed dance via technology. And so that's something that really warmed my heart. And so when you start to think about the value of technology being even more important than even pre-pandemic, it was important before. But when we talk about community development, start to think about what are the processes that support technology? And it's not just about throwing technology to the community and saying, here you go, but going to that CEO and saying, these are the systems, and this is the system we think that could be impacted with the appropriate technology, and this is what it could look like, and here's how we could continue to connect people via technology when we feel like connections are really poor during this pandemic. So not to bring a spotlight to the pandemic, but I do wanted to bring that spotlight to the technology piece. Absolutely critical as a takeaway for another way to support meaning and purpose and helping people to provide purpose, because the people just one step away from another person, one phone call away, one Zoom meeting away, joining people into technology and connecting them that way actually has become commonplace, whereas it wasn't 2 years ago. So it's, again, building social capital, using technology to build that social capital and to build those resources, equally important.
And Angie, it's a great point. As a technology co-founder, I should have brought up technology, but hey, hindsight's always 2020, right? But Michelle, any parting words here?
Yeah, it's funny. I've known Angie for a long, long time, and I literally wrote no excuses, and I underlined it twice with an exclamation point right when she said no excuses. And here's what I was thinking on that. My first, I guess, real job as an administrator was at Jackson, Mississippi's only charity nursing home, served the poorest of the poor, was Medicaid, 60-bed, 4-bed wards. When you create an environment where people dream together, magic happens. And we were on a shoestring budget and literally donated toys for kids because we were hungry for kids. And we put a jungle gym in the back. And next thing you know, kids start showing up, and we got a high chair donated. And so kids started eating with us, babies started eating with us. And it was just little organic things that happened. And so, if some of you are on the call today and you go, well, that's nice, but we don't have that budget, just stop worrying about the budget being a problem. If you have a dream, make it happen. There really is an opportunity, and there are people who want to help. You just got to connect yourself to them. And then the second thing I want to say is, please, as leadership, provide an opportunity to dream together. I'm talking elders, team, everybody needs to come together in learning circles or just dream together in a safe place, because y'all, when we aren't asked for our opinion and then we're suddenly asked, we worry if there's a catch. And so provide an environment where people are safe to dream together, and then follow up. Now that we have all these ideas, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to prioritize those, or how are we going to make those get into motion and create a synergy where there's ownership in that, and then folks truly believe in what's happening, they get behind it, and they support each other's ideas. And that's huge. So I just wanted to share that for you all that might be listening to this, getting overwhelmed, going, this will never happen at our place. It truly can. We just have to change that paradigm and be willing to listen to what the needs really are, even if it hurts our feelings, because it may be that we're in the way. But it's a matter of really opening our hearts and our minds to what the needs are.
Wow. So many great nuggets and little pieces of information coming out there. I feel like we need to put them all on a poster and like put it behind and like just really embrace that. Thanks again to Michelle, Joe, and Angie for joining me here today. I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to connect with me. We can keep the conversation going, but I'll pass it back to you, Penny. And thank you so much for the opportunity to help lead this Rockstar panel here.